Most gardeners are chasing soil health the wrong way, and honestly, it's costing them yields every single season. They dump biochar into their beds thinking it's the ultimate fix, but nothing changes. Plants still struggle, growth is uneven, and the soil never really comes alive. The problem isn't carbon, it's the type of carbon and how it's processed. Raw carbon doesn't feed your soil biology. Fermented carbon does. That's the difference most people miss, and it's exactly why these old-school fermentation methods outperform modern shortcuts. But before you even try any of this, you need to know what your soil is doing right now. One of the simplest ways to avoid ruining your progress is using a 4-in-1 soil meter that reads moisture, pH, temperature, and light. Because here's what happens. People ferment inputs, add them to soil that's already off balance, and then blame the method when it fails. I've done that myself. I'll leave the exact one I use in the description if you want to check it out. It keeps you from adding the right thing at the wrong time. Now let's get into what actually works, and why these fermentation methods build soil that improves year after year. This is why fermentation creates better soil than raw inputs. Most organic matter you add to soil has to break down first. That process takes time, and during that time, nutrients can be lost, locked up, or consumed inefficiently. Fermentation skips that delay. When you ferment plant material, you're pre-digesting it with microbes. You're turning raw carbon into a form that soil life can immediately use. That means faster microbial growth, better nutrient cycling, and more stable soil structure. In my raised beds, I've tested raw plant mulch versus fermented plant extracts side by side. The fermented side always shows faster recovery after transplanting and stronger early growth. Not slightly, noticeably. The first secret is using plant ferments instead of compost teas. A lot of gardeners rely on compost tea, and while it works, it's inconsistent. Fermented plant juice is more predictable if you do it right. I take fresh weeds or fast-growing plants like comfrey or nettles, chop them, and mix them with brown sugar at a 1-to-1 ratio by weight. Then I pack that into a container and let it sit for about a week. What comes out is a concentrated liquid full of nutrients and microbes. I dilute it about 1 to 500 with water and apply it directly to the soil. In containers I go even lighter, closer to 1 to 800, because things can get intense fast. This isn't theory. I've used this on tomatoes, spinach, and even hydroponic transitions, and the difference shows up in leaf color and growth speed within days. The second secret is fermenting carbon before adding it to soil. This is where it beats biochar. Instead of adding raw materials like sawdust or dry leaves, I ferment them first. I soak them in a mix of water, a bit of molasses, and a microbial starter, sometimes just a handful of finished compost. I let that sit for about 5 to 7 days until it develops a slightly sweet fermented smell. Then I add it to the soil. What this does is incredible. Instead of pulling nitrogen from the soil to break down carbon, the material is already partially decomposed, and that means no nitrogen lockup and plants don't stall. In one of my backyard beds, I use fermented sawdust before planting kale. Normally that would cause problems, but after fermentation, the kale grew strong without any signs of deficiency. The third secret is layering ferments instead of mixing everything at once. Most people mix everything into the soil and hope for the best. That's not how this works. I layer a thin layer of fermented plant material, then soil, then compost, then another light fermented input. This creates zones of microbial activity instead of one overloaded mix. In raised beds, this approach has given me better root development and more consistent moisture retention. It also reduces the risk of overloading the soil with too much fermentation at once, which can temporarily stress plants if done incorrectly. The fourth secret is controlling moisture during fermentation and after application. This is where most people fail. Fermentation depends on moisture, but too much water kills the process. too little, and it stalls. When I'm fermenting materials, I aim for a damp, not dripping texture. When I squeeze it, I want a few drops, not a stream, and after applying fermented inputs to soil, I water deeply once, then let the soil breathe. If you keep the soil constantly wet, you shift from beneficial fermentation to anaerobic rot, and that's when roots suffer. This is another place that soil meter becomes useful. If your soil stays too wet, you'll see it immediately instead of guessing. The fifth secret is timing your ferments with plant growth stages. Not all ferments are equal, and timing matters more than people think. During early growth, plants need nitrogen and microbial activity. That's when I use green plant ferments. During flowering and fruiting, I switch to ferments made from fruit scraps or materials higher in potassium. In my container peppers, this shift alone improved fruit size and yield noticeably. Same plants, same soil, just different fermented inputs at the right time. Most gardeners ignore timing and treat all inputs the same. That's a mistake. The sixth secret is letting the soil rest after fermentation cycles. This is the one nobody talks about, but it makes a huge difference. After a few rounds of adding fermented inputs, I stop. I let the soil stabilize for a couple of weeks. No new inputs, just watering and observation. This allows microbial populations to balance out and prevents overactivity, which can actually stress plants if pushed too far. In hydroponic systems, I've seen similar effects when transitioning from sterile to biologically active setups. There's a point where more input doesn't mean better results. Knowing when to stop is just as important as knowing what to add. Now here's what ties all of this together. It's not about copying a method, it's about understanding why it works. Fermentation transforms carbon into a living input. It feeds microbes first, and plants benefit as a result. That's why it builds soil that improves over time instead of just giving short-term results. Biochar can still have a place, especially for long-term structure. But if you're looking for active, immediate improvement in plant health and soil biology, fermented inputs outperform it in most real-world scenarios. And when you combine these methods with actual data, knowing your soil moisture, pH, and conditions, you stop wasting time and start seeing consistent results. That's the shift from casual gardening to serious growing. If you're getting value from this, subscribe to the channel, because this is the kind of practical, tested approach that actually changes how your garden performs. At the end of the day, soil is not just dirt, it's a living system. And when you learn how to work with that system, feeding it, balancing it, and sometimes stepping back, you start growing healthier plants without relying on guesswork. Share this with someone who's been struggling with soil that just won't improve. Sometimes the solution isn't adding more. It's changing how you prepare what you add.